Charles, in honor of Thanksgiving, we've got a gravy themed show today. Gravytrain spotting. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Thanks for asking. I hope you're well. It's Thanksgiving already here. Of course, they don't celebrate it in Malaysia yet, uh, but but I'm all set for. I'm getting ready for the first party that I will have thrown inside my a real party inside my apartment. Will be in a few weeks.
Hmm.
So I've been getting ready for that, and in the process, learning a lot about Penang, and it's really. I was saying to you on the phone, it's an interesting place where uh, manufacturing still is a thing, and there are lots of specialty shops, family-owned specialty shops that do different things that are interesting and that you can't really get done in America. America's sort of a consumerist, throw it out when it breaks kind of place, whereas this is a place where people don't throw stuff out; they fix it. And so there's a lot of there are carpenters or plumbers, electricians, craftsmen, etc. And they're very happy to work, which is quite different than certainly New York City. So it's a real pleasure.
That's how New York used to be, Charles. Like, I mean, even as late as the 90s, you could go get stuff made and
Right.
custom crafted, printing shops and all kinds of things, all gone. Now it's just Starbucks and people going on strike wanting money. Terrible violence today in Washington, D.C. Some Joe Biden illegal migrant shooting two National Guardsmen. I don't understand how.
What what for that Africa to be going on for size in America, specifically John Podesta.
Knocked off the internet. Sorry, keep going, Charles.
All right. But Podesta, if you go through the Podesta WikiLeaks, you find out that at the very beginning of the Simpson Thatcher review, Podesta was in China in 2011, September, October 2011. What was he doing in China? And what were he and his brother, Tony Podesta, you remember, had a big lobbying operation that held itself out as being to people as being above Obama. It was supposedly the lobbying operation that if you wanted to get anything out of the Obama administration, you went through Tony Podesta, who was then quite friendly with his brother John. So um, there was the seditious tape that it has the hallmarks of the production that was the January 6th hearing. Remember, they hired news teams and they slicked it up to make it appealing to the general public. Well, this commercial from the six, I guess it's Congress people, or five, a number of Congress people, and I guess one or more senators, saying it's okay to disobey unlawful orders. This is it's one thing to make legislation in Congress, and it's another thing to engage in, quote, oversight. It's yet another thing to intimate, as Eric Swalwell has, that the Democrats are going to take control of Congress, and when they do, anybody who follows Trump's orders is going to be investigated in the same way that Trump was investigated. That's outrageous behavior. And I think it's incumbent upon the president and his team to slap these people around. I mean, this is not, it's, you can express your opinion privately, and of course, it is true that it is all right to identify an unlawful order. But name one unlawful order that Donald Trump has promulgated.
Well,
He's
or
had a
that
lot more
anybody
patience.
has. I mean, it's kind of a big deal, though, Charles, because we can't really have every single person in the military suddenly become a lawyer, right? I mean, this concept of unlawful orders, it's an interesting concept. What is unlawful if they tell you go in there and kill everybody in that building? If you're in the army
Right?
and that's what the person in charge, don't you just have to do that?
Well, again, there are two standards. Under Joe Biden, he was basically a dictator. He jailed his enemies. He sicked multiple branches of government, multiple portions of government on Donald Trump and Donald Trump's family, who were deplatformed, debanked, indicted multiple different ways, I think illegally. That's under Biden. That's what the Democrats say. Don't you dare criticize us under Biden. Um, and now, Donald Trump is not the legitimate president, say the Democrats, basically, which harkens back to what happened with George W. Bush, where Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton are still being paid millions of dollars to write books that nobody reads other than
Well,
dumbo craps.
You read them.
No, I don't. I don't read the whole book. I go to the index. Yeah, and then I work backwards if I think it's going to be interesting. But I certainly
Charles,
wouldn't.
Isn't it ironic that they're telling people not to follow illegal orders, and then today the obviously illegal Fannie Willis prosecution gets shut down because it was completely stupid? I mean, if you want to go by that, don't follow illegal orders. If Norm Eisen were in the Army, I mean, basically any lawyer could look at anything and make an argument that this is illegal or unconstitutional or whatever, and argue about it forever.
And indeed, that was allegedly the problem under the Obama administration, where Eric Holder and others worked on the rules of engagement for the military in the various battles we were then fighting to make it incredibly difficult for our military to actually function. I mean, you think about, right or wrong, we were in Iraq, we were in Afghanistan, and my understanding from a lot of reporting is that in Afghanistan, when you go on patrol into one of these villages, it's very tough to figure out who's friend and who's foe. And so our soldiers, it is alleged, were placed at risk to make sure that we didn't have an inadvertent civilian casualty. And you can be quite certain that when Eric Holder had whatever protection he had as Attorney General, he didn't give a shit about civilian consequences inside the country, especially if the civilians involved happened to be right-leaning. So all this, I think, underscores a recent poll result, which I think I read that 70% of the country in some poll believes the U.S. government's corrupt. I'm surprised it's that low.
Yeah, why so low? 30% of the people are wrong.
They're the ones who work for the government, probably.
Hey, they're a good point. Exactly. Well, there's a lot of other stuff going on, too. I know you had a bunch on your mind that you wanted to talk about. Isn't there new stuff with the Clintons, or what's happening with people?
Well, I think the gravy spotting thing, what's been going on here is, I would argue, the United Kingdom, and I have actually relatives in the United Kingdom, and many fast friends there, and over decades I've enjoyed very much visiting and even living as I did inside the United Kingdom. But right now, that country is so badly wrong, economically, politically. What's his name? Boris Shitface or Johnson,
Right.
or whatever his name is?
Yeah, his op-ed, right.
Yeah, the nerve of that guy. During COVID, it was lock thee down. He's partying away, his buddies, drinking parties, and everyone else is locked down. He was the foreign minister, I believe, foreign secretary, in 2016 when Gina Haspel was conspiring, I would argue, with the UK to get Hillary elected, and then afterwards to frustrate the Donald Trump administration. So the United Kingdom, the economy in the United Kingdom is a disaster. I've been going there, I guess, for 50 years, and I was there first in the 70s, in the mid to late 70s. It was horrible then. I think it's worse now than it was then, 50 years later. How do you brag about the great job the government's doing? You have no freedom of speech. You have thought police chasing you down for what you might say on Facebook or Twitter as illegal immigrants are raping and pillaging across the United Kingdom. And I think we're too kind. This is, after all, a nation we had to fight one war to win independence. And not many people study the War of 1812 to 14. But apparently what happened then is when the British took Washington, D.C. and took the White House, they didn't just burn it down. First, they had a feast in the White House, and then they burned it down. So that's two big strikes against you. And now you're going to get in front of Donald Trump again and try to sabotage these Ukraine peace talks. So they're just moments ago reporting out of Bloomberg that there's transcripts of calls between Putin and an advisor and between Witkoff and somebody else that have been released. and they're trying to release these to make Witkoff look bad and make it seem as if the Russians are dictating what's going to happen. Newsflash, Britain, we lost the fucking war. Okay, in Ukraine. I mean, the Ukrainians are getting slaughtered. The country is destroyed. The population is under 50% of what it was prior to the commencement of the special military operation. The infrastructure is destroyed. The Brits they're running a deficit and towering debt. They don't have the cash to rebuild this. You're not going to get away with stealing Russia's trapped assets and using that as an investment fund. I mean, so the Brits are in loony land. And honestly, there were moments in time in the George W. Bush administration where the Brits were high-handing it and saying, we're not going to share intelligence with the U.S. anymore. We're not going to cooperate. Who do they think they are? The country is tiny. It's going, it's definitely in the sewer economically. And it is not. I mean, I would argue that there's a legitimate debate as to the composition of the so-called G8. Why is the UK in it? 70 million people. I mean, take a few cities in China or India or add them up and you got 70 million people. I mean, Britain has had a seat at the high table diplomatically for, I would argue, way too long. And certainly on Ukraine and certainly on what happened with Clinton in the election in 2016 and the aftermath, the UK has been meddling too aggressively inside America. After all, the Labour Party sent hundreds of people to campaign for Kamala Harris. Of all the dumbest moves they've done. I mean, in 2024. Meanwhile, Zelensky was campaigning with Kamala Harris, right? And on this, I think Trump is not strong enough. I would consider, for what the UK has done here, and with Sadiq Khan in there as mayor, I would say, listen, until you guys disband your digital, whatever it's called, board, and cause the EU to do the same, we are going to kick you out of the US. Or shut your consulates down, shut your embassy down, recall our ambassador, fuck you. And, we're not going to support you militarily.
They could have the new
this is ridiculous.
UK plan.
I mean, it's right. It's just, when you study England and the evolution of England after the Reformation, some of the greatest thinkers of England embraced the concept of freedom of expression as being for what it is. I mean, critical thought is generally not received well by those in power. That's a bedrock principle of freedom of expression. You may not like what people are saying, but oftentimes a kernel or more than a kernel of what's in that thought is something that does advance the course of humanity positively. And the second you start saying that you're going to, have a ministry of silly thinking, which is basically what they have, like the ministry of silly walks in Monty Python. The second you embrace that and use the state power to go against critics of the government, that is not a government we can support as the United States, UK, and in the EU. We're going to put you, Eswatini is up here, and the UK is going to be down here.
Speaking of the UK, the story of English language.
People determined to destroy the Putin administration. Could it be that these are remnants of those in the UK who so assiduously supported the old Soviet Union? And remember, you had deep penetration into academia, into politics, into what passed for society in the UK during the Cold War by people who were pro-Soviet Union.
Yeah, it's Nina's right here. She says, the Pravda network has been expanding pretty rapidly over the past year, said Nina Jankowicz, a disinformation expert who spoke to the UK Parliament earlier this week on efforts to undermine democracy. So, Charles, she's gone to England to do this. I mean, she should be charged with sedition.
Well, again, you can express a contrary opinion to Trump. That's not a problem. But this notion of disinformation, a focus on disinformation, is just it's a waste of time. There's truth and there's falsehood, and in between there's opinion. And she is not an expert at anything other than getting press, getting paid off, it would seem, by people who are happy to use her as a tool because she couldn't get a part in a Gilbert and Sullivan play. Though she likes to sing those stupid songs. I mean, this is an extremely unserious person who is lying in wait to work in the next Democratic administration, which, God forbid, may happen within 24 years or so.
Well, that's what I mean. She's laying the groundwork for that, doing all kinds of stuff in Europe and continuing to try to undermine the existing administration. Very troubling stuff, I think.
Right. And when you think about, Europe has become synonymous with bureaucracy and incredibly bad decision making. We talk about this in prior broadcasts. If you regard Europe as let's say a company, the first thing you want to ask about a company is, are its revenues growing? To grow, generally speaking, the population needs to grow in the target market. Europe's population has been shrinking for a long time, and their genius solution is to bring in people who hate European values and let them run riot, as is happening across Europe in places like Italy, where they did some study recently and discovered that an overwhelming majority of crimes is committed by illegal immigrants. So you have a basic population shrinking, addicted to a socialist state system where people are not rewarded on merit, where has historically been a huge social safety net, in essence financed by the U.S. because the Europeans didn't pay for their own defense. They may or may not be doing it now. I don't know. They say they've increased their commitments. Do they really spend the money? Have they really trained their troops? I don't know. But it's decades past time for the United States to say, this is not our party anymore. We helped you guys in World War I. We helped you guys in World War II. You're spoiling for World War III. Do that without us. We are not going into World War III with you. And certainly not with our young people doing the fighting for you. We're certainly not doing that. And to that end, I really think it's time for the United States to I would cut our overseas commitments in Europe by 95%. Maybe we still need to have that base in Germany where people fly back from when they're wounded. Maybe you need something like that. But you don't need bases all over the UK, France, Italy, Spain, all this. You just don't need them anymore. Nor should we. We can't afford them is another point. War is going to be fought very differently in future than it was in World War I and World War II. And we are joined at the hip with the UK military. We shouldn't be. We also, having watched this Ukraine misadventure, which is going into, I guess, its 12th or 13th year, the people who are inside NATO, non-American and Americans, are just too trigger happy. We do not. This is not a time where we should be wallowing in and instigating a conflict with one of the largest arsenals of nuclear weapons on the planet.
Charles, did you see that Putin said it was hybrid warfare to leak the phone call?
Yeah, he's right. I think Putin has been remarkably patient with these corrupt people who are all in for more spending that we finance with debt, which we may not be able to repay on a timely basis, because they know that the money that's spent leaks back to spouses and friends, nonprofits, or to private companies or whatever. And one of the positions that I gather, the 28, now the 18 or 19 point back and forth, one of the positions that was in the American original proposal was a complete audit of all past spending. And that's been changed to, let bygones be bygones. We're not going to look into what happened. And that's just total bullshit. I mean, it's been a long time since I've been working for other people doing deals, but I retain knowledge about when a deal is going, or instincts, when a deal is going in the correct direction and when it's going in the incorrect direction. And these knuckleheads in Europe, I mean, they should basically be told, you had your chance, there is going to be an audit, and guess what? We're going to start with American money that went to Ukraine. How much of that leaked back to England? And the people who are saying we shouldn't do this. And maybe to Boris Johnson, who Tucker Carlson claims, he may or may not be right on this. Tucker Carlson claims that that Johnson demanded $1 million appearance fee to be on Tucker, to get an interview with Tucker Carlson. So, I mean, these people who, because they were former leaders, can have dais positions at globalist conventions run by the Atlantic Council and the World Economic Forum, who fly around the world basically doing nothing positive but expecting handouts, that regime is finished. And we need to go back and get that, as much of that money back as possible. I mean, think about it. Donald Trump is not taking a salary again. I don't think Boris Johnson said, I'm going to work for free, when he was prime minister or finance minister. So it's like anything else. I've been through, unfortunately, one divorce. It's not, you don't wish that upon somebody else. And when you think about a divorce, you think about it very carefully, unless you're a moron. And it may well be that it's time for a divorce between the United States and the so-called elites who populate the World Economic Forum from Western European capitals. I mean, they do not share our values anymore. People who want to empower a gigantic censorship regime. And why that's important is, unfortunately, most people in America, especially educated people, they see something coming out of Oxford or Cambridge, and they say, ooh, those people must be smart. They got English accents. They sound pretty
Exactly.
intelligent.
Yep.
We better believe their shit. And their stuff is toxic. It's really bad thinking. And as bad as the situation is across the campi in America, I question how conservative the Conservative Party is in the UK. I don't think it's all that conservative. And I also question whether Nigel Farage will be effective as a manager should he become prime minister. So we got a rocky road. And you look across the land, Giorgia Meloni in Italy, yeah, she's always been a mess in the South. Germany is a disaster. Spain has and France have huge illegal immigration problems. UK, it's an area. We go out and 28 point. Here. I would insist on as any further spending in this.
But we've got to make our way over to the First Amendment Forum. We're going to talk about that. Money going to Ukraine, all of that kind of stuff. People can join us on crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com, subscribestar.com, and patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. Speaking of Europe, Charles, I think people want to hear what you have to say about France trying to assassinate Candace Owens. So we'll talk about all of that on the other side.